The way we view football, much like anything and everything else in life, is all about perspective. And while every individual to an extent does share their own unique perspective on each matter, there's no denying that when it comes to football, said perspective certainly switches severely and sincerely depending on which side of the barricade you reside in. And in this video I'm going to talk about players who are showered with praise by teammates, get claims of being the best around by teammates, yet when you observe it from the perspective of someone who's detached from it all, i.e. someone with more of an objective outlook, and assess the player's success levels, consistency in performances, as well as various other factors, the math simply don't math. In other words, it's the case of ability versus achievements. Because you see, former teammates, when asked about who the best they played with is, usually heavily prioritize ability over achievements. I'd say close to giving it an 80-20 split. This is because, while some may be fans, most quite frankly don't care enough to assess and or recall the career paths of their teammates and simply go off the memories they share in games and or training. Us true fans, however, different story. And therefore, this true fan here will give the ability and achievements more of a 50-50 split and, in turn, indeed see where the math don't math. 7 players who are overrated by their own teammates. Let's roll on. Number 7, CR7's namesake R9. We start with a very classic example of the ability versus achievements conflict outlined in the intro. I'm sure you've heard many of these before, but here are some examples. Ruud van Nistelrooy has played with Cristiano Ronaldo, yet he said R9 was his best teammate. Edmilson has played with Lionel Messi, yet he said R9 was his best teammate. Robinho has played with Zinedine Zidane. He said R9 was his best teammate. Zidane himself has played with Thierry Henry. Yet, he said R9 was his best teammate. And yes, as far as natural talent and ability, R9 could very conceivably be more talented than all those guys. And most, if not all, have picked R9 due to what they saw the man do close up in games, and in Van Nistelrooy's case almost certainly in training, as R9 could barely walk by the time Ruud arrived at Real. But you see, fact of the matter is, when we do give ability and achievements anywhere in the vicinity of a 50-50 split, never mind Messi and Ronaldo, R9 didn't get to the levels of a Zidane, didn't get to the levels of a Ronaldinho, and what will hurt the hippies even more, didn't get to the levels of various top level defenders he played alongside like Cafu, Carlos, Zanetti, Ramos. If you want to learn more, watch this video, but let me just remind you, it only stings because it's true. Number 6, Philippe Coutinho. Another Brazilian magician put on a pedestal by his teammates, his achievements simply do not reflect. With players like Thiago Alcantara, Simon Mignolet, and Ricky Lambert hailing Philippe Coutinho as one of, if not the best player they've ever played alongside. Certainly the number one as far as technical ability. And while the last point there may honestly be close to inarguable, the man did have incredible technical ability. If you fancy a few fair but firm, frank and forthright facts as far as Philippe's football career, well, here they are. He was a young fringe player at Inter Milan, was one of the mainstays of an underachieving Liverpool side and left before they became a real force. He then moved to Barcelona, where he had one brilliant and in all honesty underrated season which stupidly gets labelled as a Messi carry job, but then spent the remainder of his time there either out on loan to Bayern, where he either was once again a fringe player or was occupied with unfortunate injuries, but then finally managed to become a consistent first team regular for Aston Villa. Before then, much like many Brazilians, albeit of an era gone by, leaving Europe by 30 years of age. Number 5, Marcus Rashford. So I'll try to be as objective as I possibly can with this, because sometimes I just do think it's not him, it's me. Because you see, simple facts are I've never really rated Marcus Rashford all that highly. So let me get this straight. Poor IQ, poor with his back to goal, poor with the ball at his feet, poor passer of the ball, poor crosser of the ball, poor kids look up to him, and rightly so, but on the pitch, Marcus Rashford offers practically nothing outside the running behind. In short, as a footballer, you can either describe him as poor or even take the R away from that word if you wish to be mean. Look, case in point. Apologies if I was too vague with how I really felt. But yes, the man, even during the couple of seasons where he put up world-class numbers, has always been extremely one-dimensional to me. He's a player who, while he does have all the tools physically, has always lacked the intelligence to be anything more than a mere pace merchant. Almost like a right-footed, untrained Gareth Bale. Sorry guys, But clearly a lot of his teammates share a far different opinion to myself, specifically the likes of Wayne Rooney, Jesse Lingard, and Harry Maguire, who before Ronaldo arrived said Marcus Rashford was the best player he's ever played with. And yes, while some of you may think Maguire simply didn't have many options to choose from before Ronaldo arrived, if you ask me, Anthony Martial has always been twice the player Rashford is. Hence, maybe, just maybe, it's not him, it's me. Number 4, Riyad Mahrez. Yet another typical case of a player's ability to an unfair extent overshadowing his actual achievement / importance. Not only do the majority of the Leicester players point to him when asked who the best player of that legendary team was, he also won PFA Player of the Year that year too. Reality, the way that Leicester team played, without Mahrez, they'd still be in the neighbourhood of top 4. Without Vardy, they'd still be in the neighbourhood of top 10. Without Kante, Leicester City, much like the previous year, would have been battling relegation. But it was not over here, because even when Mahrez moved to Man City, he continued receiving unusually high praise by his teammates, even amongst that star-studded squad of studs. Reality? He was a sub for most of his first year, only completing 90 minutes in just over a third of the games. He was admittedly brilliant in his second season, but, well, City weren't. He had his best season the next season and won the treble in his last season, despite once again only completing 90 minutes in just over a third of the games, as well as not featuring at all in either cup finals. Number 3, Ryan Giggs. Not the first Manchester United player on this list, won't be the last either. Coincidence? Probably, but also probably not. Cause my friends,
I want to talk to you about loyalty.
Cause that's what I believe a lot of this is. Sir Alex Ferguson in the 90s built an environment where the players were merely cogs in a machine where one simply cannot function without the other. This led to the building of so many great relationships, the likes of which remain strong today. And therefore it isn't exactly a huge surprise when players like Bart, Neville, Keane, or even later additions like Ferdinand Evra and Van Nistelrooy speak of Ryan Giggs in a way that suggests he's one of the greatest wingers of all time, who then apparently seamlessly transitioned into a world-class central midfielder. In truth, he was no doubt a world-class winger in his prime, but if we're being honest, still a level below Gareth Bale, Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah and David Beckham, and nowhere near the likes of Premier League Ronaldo. And as far as his transition, well, he did eventually become a very useful centre mid and won a couple of league titles there. It was far from smooth sailing as one can imagine, with Giggsy in fact getting a lot of stick from his own fans in the beginning of this process. Unfairly so, but he still did. And yet Ryan Giggs is still not the most overrated Manchester United player from that era as far as his teammates go, because that would be number 2, Paul Scholes. Well, it is a dingy. So if you are one of the first 1000 of my subscribers, you may be surprised to see this guy on the list, because yes, I have previously made a video saying Paul Scholes may very well be the greatest midfielder in the history of the Premier League. And yes, I stick by that. And yes, that indeed means his teammates would have to heap a lot of praise for him to reach a level where he's being overrated. And yes, even then they managed. Go and listen to literally any of Scholes' teammates from England and especially United in his career, especially post 2004 when he transitioned into the sitting role. They're all just in awe of him. And you know what? It is somewhat understandable. Somewhat understandable. But not to this extent. What extent? To the extent where there are still even now a few Manchester United players who were at the club sometimes, if not for the entirety of the 6 years between 2003 and 2009, that say Paul Scholes is the best player they have played with. And hey, you and I have been speaking for a while now, so let me tell you a bit about myself. More specifically, things I don't care about. I don't care about how Ronaldo wasn't in his prime at United. I don't care how cleanly Scholes strikes a ball. I don't care about how amazing Scholes is in training. And I don't care about how quiet, unassuming and therefore likable he is. CR7 from 2005 to 2009 did more than enough to eclipse everything Paul Scholes did as an individual player, and be it for sentimental reasons or otherwise, some United players simply don't recognize that. But don't you jump to conclusions just yet, because if you think this is me simply sticking up for Ronaldo, well, you know who else claimed Paul Scholes was the best player he ever played with? Carlos Tevez. Yup, I rest my case. Number 1, Moussa Dembele. This has to stop. Because you see, at first it was kind of fascinating how so many of his teammates would hail a player who, let's be honest, unless you're a Spurs fan who watches them week in, week out, never really paid much attention to, as the best they've played with. And listen, I'm not saying the rest of us are blind. It's pretty obvious the guy was a unit and pretty much a genius in using his body to aid in ball retention. And let's be honest, he can play a bit too. But the best you've ever played with? And please put yourself in the POV of a Spurs player between 2012 and 2019 when I say this again. The best you've ever played with. The best you've ever played with. The best you've ever played with. The best you've ever played with? And you know what? It ain't even just his teammates anymore, is it? It's reached even beyond the training grounds in North London. And for an example of that, I direct you to this conversation regarding the greatest Arsenal-Tottenham combined 11 between a geography teacher, his favourite student, and the kid who makes his job a nightmare.
Patrick Vieira, Cesc Fabregas, and Moussa Dembele.
My three is Modric, Moussa Dembele, and Vieira.
Dembele is unplayable.
Dembele's in mine, obviously.
Nope. And that is that. Agree or disagree beats indifference. So what do you think of this list? Are there any other players overrated by teammates that I've missed out? Let me know in the comments below. And as usual, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Till next time, you keep rolling.